everyone. Welcome to Wine.com Experiences. I'm Gwendolyn Osborne, and today we are taking a tour through Italy. We're so excited that so many of you, nearly 700 of you, have decided to join us today to talk and taste and learn from our extraordinary guests who will be joining us. For those of you who purchased the wine ahead of time, I realize there may be only one or two of you at home tasting tonight, and I get that you might not have the capacity to get through all 6 wines, which I suppose is reasonable. Since this tasting will be available on the Wine.com YouTube channel, just ongoing, feel free to open just 2 or 3 wines tonight, maybe the wines that our speakers are representing, and then you can come back to open the others at another time and just rewatch and follow along on our YouTube channel. So do whatever's best for you. We will be here to help you taste along. So also one note is usually we try to keep these to about a half hour, but because we have such great guests and 6 wines, we might go a little bit longer. So be prepared for that. However, that said, let's get started. Okay, so where are we going today? We will be taking a tour of Italy from Val do Biadene in Veneto, where that's home of Prosecco, to Campania, and then to Friuli, down to Tuscany, all the way down to Sicily, and then end up in Piedmont. And what are we tasting? We will be tasting Nino Franco Rustico Prosecco Superiore, Feudi di San Gregorio Falen Ghena, Terlato Family Vineyards, Friuli Pinot Grigio, Il Poggione Rosso di Montalcino, Altamora Etna Rosso, and finally Gaia Marisco. Okay. The lineup. Joining me to taste and talk about these delicious wines are Antonio Capaldo from Feudi di San Gregorio to talk us through his Falen Ghena. And we also have Alessandro Bindocci from Tuscany's Il Poggione, who will enlighten us on his Rosso di Montalcino, and Gaia Gaja, who will be talking about her family's property in Piedmont while we taste through one of the wines from her label. Welcome to all of you. It is so nice for you to be here and staying up late to taste and talk with us and share. So we're really excited to have all of you here. That said, I'm actually going to be the one leading you through the first wine, and then we're going to get to one of our guests. But let's start off with the Nino Franco Rustico Prosecco Superiore. This wine hails from Val do Biadene, which, say that 5 times fast. So this is a village at the center of Prosecco region in Veneto. It's where the best vineyard sites are, and it is the region within Prosecco that has DOCG status, which is the highest classification. So you'll see the bottles here labeled Prosecco Superiore, and that's when they're coming from the Val do Biadene region, and it's kind of the top of the top, creme of the creme. This wine is made from 100% Glera grape, which is the grape of Prosecco. And the winery, Nino Franco Rustico, they have been making wine for 100 years now. Primo Franco, who is 3rd generation proprietor, has really focused on bringing this top quality style Prosecco to the international market, which is great. And you've probably seen this label before. It's a fairly well-known Prosecco, and it's absolutely delicious. So many of you probably know, but if those of you may not, that unlike the traditional method of making sparkling wine like champagne, Prosecco actually goes through the 2nd fermentation in a closed tank. So rather than those kind of baked bread, biscuity aromas and flavors you get from champagne and traditional method, Prosecco is much more about fruit and flowers. I call it fruity and floral wine. So those are kind of the aromas that are most prominent. And this, when you're tasting that, you absolutely get that. You get the pear and the ripe apple, and then just kind of a big bouquet of spring flowers coming through. So just very delicate but pretty sort of wine. And then when you taste it, it's a very soft wine, but that said, it still has really great crisp acidity. It's clean, it's fresh, but it has that kind of delicate floral thing going on with also the ripe fruit. I think this is an amazing example of Prosecco Superiore because it has that wonderful balance of being delicate, but yet at the same time having a great backbone of acidity to make it very bright. So that is our Nino Franco Prosecco, and I hope you guys enjoy this. It's a fantastic wine. I've been drinking this for probably a decade now. But next up, we are going to move to our Falen Ghena. So Antonio from Feudi de San Gregorio is here to talk with us about this wine. Antonio, thank you so much for being here with us.
My pleasure, thank you.
So your winery is quite young in comparison to many other wineries that have been making wine for these hundreds of years. And I think you're second generation there, but your family has a great story and a love for land. Can you tell us a little bit about the history of the winery and how you kind of came to be a part of it?
Yes, in Italy, if you don't have like a 20 generation of history in wine, you're young, But in reality, we started in '86 after an earthquake devastated the area, and it was my father's and my uncle's love for their homeland that was the ignition for this investment. I was lucky to have this opportunity when I joined in 2009 because I have a strong passion for wine, actually for drinking, because at the end of the day, passion for wine is follow your curiosity and just try as many things as you can do. Not all together maybe, and the connection with my homeland. So for me to work at the winery is an opportunity to put Campania, my home region, in the international wine map, because it's not that well known. And we do that with a quite contemporary approach. So modern styling wine and also modern styling labels and communication. We don't pretend that we have 2 or 3 centuries of history. We do this consistently in everything we do.
So I love that though, but where this wine comes from in Campania, even though you don't have generations of people, you have indigenous varieties. It's not like you're planting Cabernet and Chardonnay. You have these unique older vines coming, these rich volcanic soils, and again, these indigenous grapes that really are just unique to this one specific area. So, that is tradition. And so tell us a little bit about that in Campania, what it's like kind of working with these varieties that are just unique to there.
Yes, there are 3 main ingredients. The first one is indigenous varietal, enjoying an incredible and outstanding history, all coming from the Greek or the Roman times, over 2,000 years. Campania is probably the homeland for wine production in Italy, and one of the first places where the vine was cultivated in Europe, after it came from Georgia to Greece to southern Italy. So we have an history, and we have indigenous varietals that have been there forever. The other 2 key ingredients for me are a climate that are surprisingly not southern, very humid, over 150 days of rain because we are up in the hills. And the third thing, which probably is the most evident in the taste of the wine and the style of the wine, is the volcanic soils, because it brings minerality in the wine and also a great flexibility in pairing wine. So these are the 3 things that really are peculiar to our area.
So Falen Ghena is the white wine that we will be tasting here. So let's get to that. I need to get it in my glass. So I'll just let everybody know we actually opened it last night, so I'm well ahead of the curve here tasting it. I love Falen Ghena, and this is I love your label too, for those at home, which is beautiful, and tell us a little bit about that in a second. But Falen Ghena, what are some of the let's talk and taste through this together, and maybe you can kind of tell us some of the typical characteristics and how that links to the soil and all those good things.
Yeah, first of all, Falen Ghena, it sounds very Italian, it sounds very joyful, which by the way is the characteristic of the wine itself. But Falen Ghena owes its name to a Latin word, falanga. And actually back in ancient times, the farmers used to grow the vines on the trees because they could grow vegetables on the ground. So it was a way of maximizing productivity. And falanga was the stick of wood they used to squeeze and to harvest, like you do with olive trees today. So actually, Falen Ghena, the name recalls a great history of the viticulture itself. No? And the varietal is quite unique because I think together you find structure, but also aromatic, clear aromatic flavors. And in the nose, and both in the nose and in the mouth, aromaticity comes out pretty evident. At the same time, freshness, which comes from these climate conditions, when you start drinking the wine, is evident and helps you in any possible pairing with creamy and more fat, let's say, dishes. And also the music comes in the aftertaste and in the length of the taste. So I think what I like about this wine, of course it's mine, so I'm a little bit, I may not be neutral about it, but I think it's a simple wine with a great structure. So it's a wine that simple, there is nothing bad about simple. Simple is important because simple means that it conveys in an immediate way the joy that we have been trying to put in while making it. So it's immediate, it's joyful, it's simple, at the same time it's a serious wine because the structure, it's quite long finish. So I think it's a wine that, by the way, it's a very iconic wine of what Italy, great wines can be. More than what you just taste, more than what you just see.
It is pretty. And what did you say the type of food that you like to pair with this?
I stay in my region and I say it's great for aperitif or for entree, and it's great for mozzarella pairing, which it's a classic, or for marinated raw fish, which is also a classic in southern Italy in general.
So you're kind of staying with the go local, where when you have a local wine, try the local foods, and it's usually going to be a good match.
Yeah. I think it's great to do this as much as possible. No?
Yes. Well, when one can. Yes, that sounds delicious to me. One more quick question was just that Campania, you have these grapes that are not quite as well known throughout the world. It was actually a question that came in from somebody who's going to be watching tonight, but how, when you have Aglianico and Greco and Falen Ghena, these wines that people don't know and they don't get as much airtime or publicity, I suppose, as Piedmont or Tuscany, what do you do to kind of bring this to customers internationally?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity, because at the end of the day, people are curious about wine. They want to know new stories. So actually, for me, it's not that complicated. Because obviously, knowing more stories and trying new things. So at the end of the day, what you do is that you just stimulate the curiosity of people, and then you tell the stories, because there are strong stories, history, but also great wines. So at the end of the day, I feel lucky to be producing wine in a so-called underdog region, because I think we have great opportunity. There is a generation of sommelier and drinkers that want to discover new things. To be invited here, it's a great opportunity as well. And for sure, it's wines that not all the people know. So I think in this world, to have things that still need to be discovered is a great opportunity. So that's what we play when we communicate these wines.
Okay. And wine is a lot about discovery and telling stories,
Yes.
which is exactly what you're doing. Thank you so much. Like I said, we're already big fans of this wine, and I hope some people have tried it for the first time and found something new that they love.
Thank you.
So the next wine in our lineup is Trulato Friuli Pinot Grigio. This wine comes from the Friuli region of Italy in the northeast corner, specifically the very respected region of Friuli-Venezia. Yes, I have to read these. Italian is not, I took French. So this is a beautiful place, a beautiful area. And Friuli is where I send people when they say, I don't know how I feel about Pinot Grigio, isn't it just kind of boring? And no, it's not. And especially from Friuli, I feel like this is kind of putting Pinot Grigio back on the map to say, yes, we can have some complexity. Yes, we can have some texture. And so this Pinot Grigio is actually a great example of that, the Trulato. So the fruit is all on the hillsides. And it's a project by Bill Trulato, who is an importer of many Italian wines, and whose father was one of the first to actually bring Pinot Grigio into the United States market, which is kind of cool. So to properly appreciate it, Trulato even went a little bit further and partnered with Riedel to create its own Friuli Pinot Grigio glass. So I will be drinking the Pinot Grigio from that. It's a really lovely shape. It kind of makes it very expressive. So let's taste this wine. So in this glass, you have, the citrus that often comes with Pinot Grigio, right? But you also have these stone fruits, kind of like a ripe peach and nectarine and pear. And then again, that floral note that we also got a little bit in the Prosecco. It's very expressive for a Pinot Grigio. It has a lot going on. And then when you taste it, I think the thing that sticks out for me about this wine, more than many Pinot Grigios that you might have normally, is that it has a texture to it. It has a weight. So it has those really lovely stone fruits. And then it isn't just zippy and short finish. It has a nice long finish. It has some things going on there. But yeah, it's kind of that lip smacking good style of wine with a little bit of character. So I encourage you, hopefully you're tasting this at home, but I encourage you to definitely try more fruity Pinot Grigios, because, and this one again is a fantastic example of showing what kind of character they bring to the mix. Okay, that is our Pinot Grigio. We are going to move on to the reds. I feel like I am just zooming through these 6 wines, but we're gonna get this done. We're all professionals. Okay, we are going to taste the Il Poggione Rosso di Montalcino with Alessandro. Thank you so much for being here, Alessandro. This property has a super rich history as well. It was founded in the late 19th century and was one of the original producers of Brunello di Montalcino. And I believe that the family is still, it's one of those many generations style of wineries that we were talking about. Alessandro, how long have you been making wine at this obviously gorgeous property here?
Hi, Gwendolyn. My family has been working at Poggione since the late 1800s, really, since when the winery was founded. I personally officially started working at the winery in 2006 after I graduated from enology school, but my father has been working there since 1976, and also my grandfather and great-grandfather worked there. So my sister Francesca and I are the 4th generation of our family working at Il Poggione. A very long history. So 5-generation owners and 4-generation winemakers.
So you were on the winemaker. So you have the owners, they're on their 4th generation, and then you have also the winemakers have continued down that family line working with the same people. That is a fantastic story.
Yeah, it's quite unique. Yeah,
yes, that is. So talking a little bit about Rosso di Montalcino, could you explain the difference and how it kind of relates to Brunello di Montalcino? Because I don't think people always understand what it is, because Brunello refers to the grape, but then when you say Rosso, that just means red. So give us a little brief explanation on that.
Of course, yeah. Brunello di Montalcino, of course, is a much older appellation than Rosso di Montalcino. It started as a wine in the late 1800s, but then it became an appellation in the 1960s. And of course, Brunello is made with Sangiovese, 100%, and it has like some certain requirements that we have to follow. Of course, not only the use of Sangiovese, but also a minimum barrel aging, minimum bottle aging, and we have to wait 5 years from the harvest in order to sell it. Rosso di Montalcino is a much younger appellation. It started in the 1980s. The area of production is exactly the same as the Brunello, so only the municipality of Montalcino. And the grape is also the same, Sangiovese, 100%. But of course, has like easier requirements than the Brunello. So the Rosso di Montalcino can be sold only 1 year after the harvest, and doesn't have to be aged in oak. Most wineries age it. We do age it for 1 year in large French barrels that are like 5,000 liters, so really big barrels that we call botti in Italy. But it's a younger, fresher approach to the Brunello, a bit of a preview of what the Brunello is going to be 5 years later. So it's really something, more approachable, yet with a good structure and good personality.
Okay, and are the Brunello and the Rosso the only 2 wines that you produce at Il Poggione?
No, actually we have a fairly broad range of wines. We have the oldest wine ever made in Montalcino, which is called Mescalero Di Montalcino. Mm-hmm. Then we make a rosé out of Sangiovese.
I have drunk that. Yes.
And it's the way for us to use the younger vineyards before they are used for the Rosso and the Brunello. And of course, we also make a Super Tuscan, which is in our case a blend of Sangiovese, Merlot, and Cabernet Sauvignon. And then of course the typical Tuscan Vinsanto, which is a blend of Trebbiano and Malvasia, and also it doesn't fall into the wine category, but we also make a Grappa di Brunello. And olive oil, of course, as most
Italians do. Yes. So one of the questions that had come in before this was asking exactly what does Super Tuscan or a Super Tuscan kind of mean? If you could just kind of give a brief detail explanation of that, would be great.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, Super Tuscan is not an official appellation for wine. Like Brunello or Barolo, etc. Super Tuscan was, I believe, it was a name that was created in the 1980s to define a wine that wasn't part of the official appellations, and it was often a blend of Sangiovese with other varieties, mainly international varieties, or just a blend of international varieties themselves, like Cabernet Merlot. So it was a non-official appellation that was used to define wines that weren't official appellations.
Got it. Thank you. I appreciate that explanation. Very good. Okay, so let's taste your Rosso and kind of talk through what we're getting here and kind of what's the style. When you kind of maybe some of the typical aromatics we get, the structure, what we're looking for.
Yeah, of course. But first of all, the wine is made with 100% Sangiovese, as I was mentioning earlier. And we have vineyards at different altitudes in the property. The property is quite large, so that allows us to have vineyards at different altitudes. We have vineyards at 150 meters, that is like 500 feet above sea level. So we get like more powerful wines from the lower elevation, but also vineyards at 450 meters, so like roughly 1,500 feet above sea level. So you get wines that are, fresher, more elegant. So we make a blend of the two grapes. But both vineyards, all the vineyards that we have and that we use for the Rosso di Montalcino are at least 15 years old or older. So that allows us to have always very balanced wines, no matter what the weather is during the harvest. Okay. So in the Rosso di Montalcino, first of all, you look at the color. The color is a beautiful ruby red color. Mm-hmm. That's what it looks in a Sangiovese. It's never too dark. It's beautiful, bright, ruby red. And on the nose, you have the typical flavors of the Sangiovese, younger Sangiovese. So a lot of red fruit, especially cherries. Cherries is what you immediately smell in a Rosso di Montalcino. A lot of, black cherries, especially. Mm-hmm. That are the typical indication of a wine made with 100% Sangiovese.
That's true. Cherries are.
On the palate, you find again this beautiful fruit, but also have this beautiful freshness. The structure, the tannins, but also like a nice freshness that tells you that this wine is a food-friendly wine. Rosso di Montalcino is probably the most versatile wine for food pairing. It really, really works well with everything. But also this persistence. You think, you mentioned before that many people think Rosso to be like a basic wine because the name, makes you think that is a, very simple wine. But instead, Rosso di Montalcino can actually be a wine that lasts for many years. I mean, it's enjoyable now. It's a beautiful, beautiful glass of wine that you can, drink on its own, but also, of course, with food. But at the same time, if you want to, if you have patience, you can keep it a few years and will be definitely, even more different wine, very interesting as well, with more like developed aromas like you would find in an aged Brunello or in an aged Tuscan red wine.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, I hear this described often as the baby Brunello of something, but yeah, like at a 5-year, I can see it really developing into something much more for those that don't have patience for the Brunello. This is beautiful. It is lovely. And what is your favorite food with it? I know you said it's very food friendly, goes with a lot, but if you had one.
Yeah, I mean, it's great on its own. Of course, it's you can enjoy it with pretty much the whole meal. A nice pasta with meat sauce, stewed wild boar, cheese, roasted vegetables, or of course we're talking about local food. A nice Tuscan pecorino, a sheep cheese, would work pretty well with this wine. And of course, like, the other night I had a simple pizza that I made at home. And of course, a glass of Rosso works really, really well with it.
Yes, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for sharing. This is absolutely delicious. And big fan. I can't believe I forgot that I have had your rosé like a few times. So also really good stuff. So thank you, Alessandro.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on. We have the next red that we'll be tasting is the Altamora Etna Rosso. So this is one of my favorites. That's fine. Okay, so we are headed into Sicily. This is a Sicilian wine, the Altamora Etna Rosso. This is what you'd get if Nebbiolo married Pinot Noir. That's kind of how I look at it. The grape is 100% Nerello Mascalese. That is an indigenous grape to the island of Sicily. And the grapes are coming from these high elevation vineyards right next to Mount Etna. So yeah, volcano. Again, we're getting into those volcanic soils, and it has some really cool dirt there. So that adds to kind of what's going on in this glass. The wine is just so perfumed. It's beautiful. It has these kind of brambly, like raspberries and strawberries still on the vine. And then you get the herbal note and almost like a smoky note. And then you have some really interesting peppery spice and like some dried thyme. It's a very complex bouquet that I like. It's not too heavy. It's not too dense. It's just kind of uplifting. And then on the palate, it has those kind of delicate flavors the same way a great Nebbiolo or Pinot Noir does. It does not have the same tannic structure as Nebbiolo. It's more in the softer tannins, but you still get a good grip. And it's vibrant. It has good acidity. It has lovely tannins, but everything's just so well integrated, and it kind of just lingers through that finish. So if you enjoy this wine, I encourage you to try more Etna Rossos. They're really fun to discover. Actually, Etna Biancos as well are absolutely delicious. But it's just a really great example of just a grape that does so well in this one specific place, in this unique soil. And it's just a delicious wine. So something great with, again, Alessandro was talking about, meat sauce on pasta or something would be fantastic. Okay, so that is our Etna Rosso. Our last wine, we are going to head back up to Piedmont. So this is a blend coming from Piedmont, and Gaia will be talking to us about this wine. Gaia, thank you so much for being here today. Your family has these deep roots in Barbaresco, and I know your father was instrumental in kind of bringing awareness to Barbaresco and its ability to create these age-worthy, incredible, long-lasting wines. Sito Moresco is the wine that we're talking about, though. So I would love to know kind of why did you decide to create Sito Moresco? It's a blend, which is more unusual in Piedmont, and just kind of what drew you to this place and this style.
Yeah. Yes, so what we are tasting tonight is Sito Moresco, which, as you said, is unusual for Piemonte because it's a blend to start with. And is a wine that my father introduced in the history of my family estate. And he introduced Sito Moresco in the 70s. So up to the 60s, the only wine that my family was producing was Barbaresco. So we were producing only one wine that was a wine that needed at least 10 years to completely be arrived to his perfect drinkability. This is not true anymore today, because I think that Barolo, Barbaresco are much more approachable than the past. But in the 70s, we decided to come out with a wine that, differently from Barbaresco, could be more approachable. And this was something new for my family. The other unusual approach was the idea of working on a blend. You know that there are other regions of Italy, Toscana, for example, where Sangiovese has always been blended with other varieties. But in Piemonte, Nebbiolo, Dolcetto, Barbera, Arnese, everyone is 100% variety. And then the third unusual approach was to start working with varieties that at the time were experimental varieties. So, for instance, this wine that we are drinking, this vintage, because every year it changes a bit, the blend. This year, the wine is produced with Nebbiolo, a 50% of Nebbiolo, a 40% of Barbera, and a 10% of Merlot. If you look at the label, it has a denomination which is Lange, Lange DOP. So Lange identifies a region, the region where I'm from, which is a region that is very special because it has an incredible ecosystem. I don't know if this is English, but it's an ecosystem of landscape, people, food, traditions. There is a lot of, there is a rich culture. To give you an idea, the area of Lange is as big as 10,000 hectares. So it's 24,700 acres. And in that denomination, in that area, you can make a Lange DOC. You can call it DOC or DOP. We chose to call it DOP. It's exactly the same thing. Simply, since as we are part of Europe, we can choose if we want to use an Italian acronym or if you want to use a European one. And so we decided to go for the European one, but it's exactly the same. So it's a Lange wine. Inside Lange, there are two smaller regions that are the region of Barbaresco and the region of Barolo, which are much smaller. So Barbaresco is an area of 700 hectares, 1,700 acres, and Barolo is 2,000 hectares, 5,000 acres. So my family owns vineyards only in Barolo and Barbaresco. So Sito Moresco is coming from our properties, Barolo and Barbaresco. Everything started in that vineyard that you showed before. So at the beginning, Sito Moresco was produced from one vineyard, and that's where the name comes from. Sito Moresco, Sito means site, and Moresco is the name of Giovannini Moresco, a man that in the 70s sold us the vineyards. He still kept the house, and he lives in the house that is in the center of the property. And the label, we decided to use a label, not the black and white label that for everyone is associated and was associated with Barbaresco, but for an innovative wine, we chose a different label. And it's a label that shows two pheasants, is a couple. There is the male in front, the female behind. And it's simply because the vineyard pheasants are very typical of the Lange region. It is closer to a wood that was called the wood of the gold pheasants, and so we took inspiration from that to put it on the label. So today the wine is not only coming from that vineyard. Part of the Nebbiolo is coming also from our vineyards in Barolo. So every year it may change. Sometimes it can be mostly Serralunga and La Morra, but can be also some other vineyards of Barbaresco. The Barbera is planted inside the same spot where we have our single vineyards. Costa Russi, Soritildini, Sori San Lorenzo, Spers are vineyards planted with Nebbiolo and with a little bit of Barbera. A Barbera that we use for Sito Moresco. And this is interesting because Barbera is a variety that in the Lange region always unfortunately got the second places. Nebbiolo, it's the king variety, and so Barbera usually has always been planted north or east. But interesting is the fact that it's coming from south and southwest slopes. And then there is a little bit of Merlot, which is was planted more than 40 years ago and is present in that original vineyard that you saw. I never really like to talk about a percentage. I said it's 50% Nebbiolo, 40% Barbera, 10% Merlot. I don't like it simply because it's misleading. It always, I have the feeling that gives the idea that the wine is a recipe and that I'm telling you the recipe of how to make the wine. And in reality, the wine is the thing that I like the most of wine is that wine is an interpretation of a place and an interpretation of a vintage, of a weather. No? And the wine keeps a memory of that weather and of where it comes from. When you have a blend, so obviously the interpretation is my interpretation. So it's the interpretation of the winemaker that made different choices. Everyone, we are all under the same sky, but we all take different decisions. So my interpretation is to decide when it's time to harvest, or if it's better to keep the bunches covered by the leaves or de-leaf them. These are the interpretation that the producer can make, which give you a different result into the wine. But the wine is also interpreted by the varieties. So when you work with the blend, is interesting because the soil, it's like the territory is explained through the voices of 3 different protagonists. In this case, Nebbiolo, Barbera, and Merlot. What we try to do is, as in every other wine we make, to try to have the most loyal and the most intense example of Nebbiolo, Barbera, and Merlot. So we try to express the personality of each variety at the best, because the idea of a blend is that you should gain complexity. And so the complexity comes from very strong characters, and so a very precise interpretation of these 3 varieties. 3 variety quite different. Nebbiolo is a variety that is has a thin skin, thin light color, but very tenacious. When you drink Sito Moresco, the personality, the structure of the wine, the tannins are given by Nebbiolo. It's a wine that Nebbiolo is a variety that has I like to say that it makes resistance. When you are trying to drink it and to swallow it, the Nebbiolo resists, doesn't want to go down. Has a tannins holding to your tongue and to your palate. Barbera, completely different. It's a variety that has much more of a thick skin. And so also the color, it's richer, it's more purple, has very high acidity. And this year has been fundamental because 2017 was an extremely hot vintage. And so the Barbera really helped to keep the acidity very high. And then Merlot is the variety that Merlot has always been the gentle variety, trying to make more gentle a strong, tough variety. And so also in this blend plays, even though it's for 10%, but plays a very important role and helps in giving more fruit concentration and a mouthfeel that is more rich to the blend.
Should we taste it together?
Yeah.
Yes, yes. I'm going to start calling this a super Piedmont, by the way. Just, you know, like a super Tuscan. I think it's, you know, super Piedmont, right?
I like it. So at the end, it is an interpretation of the same soil. So I think that these 3 varieties, they talk in different way. They describe in different way, anyway, what is Langa. And so what is Langa is an area that gives you wines that are structured. So it's a wine that has continue to keep a strong structure. The perfumes, there is a nice fruit concentration, like I want to say raspberry, particularly gooseberries, but it's not only fruit. There is a lot of earthiness. I think it's a characteristic in general of Piemonte wines. It's an area where you always have a floral, a earthy, a rooty spectrum in the perfume of the wines. So also here I find it.
Yeah, that balance of fruit, floral, and earth, I think, is kind of defining so much of Piedmont. I love this. What would you eat with this? What would you pair food with this?
It goes very well with white meat. So I like it very much with chicken, just roasted, or pasta with a meat sauce. With bread and cheese, which is my usual, not usual, but often is my dinner.
Yeah.
Goes very well.
There's nothing better, so yeah. Maybe I'll do salami sometimes, but other than that, yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
This is just delicious. We've already had this before, but it's really nice tasting it with you and kind of getting the impact from, or the kind of explanation of the three grapes in there in your interpretation, which I love how that's described, because wine it's our living thing in the bottle. Okay, so, we got a lot of questions both before this and also during. So we've had some people in the background gathering some together to ask each of you. So the first one, there's a lot of people that want to know how and if, or if and how the coronavirus crisis has affected the wine industry in Italy. Or just kind of like affected the people working there, or the vineyards, or the vintage. Antonio, could you speak to that?
Of course it did. I mean, it did impact our lives. But the first thing we thought at the winery was, of course, to keep producing, but have everyone safe. So it's easy in the vineyards because you can easily implement physical distancing, wearing protective mask, and keep working in the vineyards. So we kept working, and honestly, we had one idea in mind, and we still have one idea in mind. And luckily, April was a wonderful month with hot during the day, cool in the night. The obsession is we want to make this an outstanding vintage, because of course 2020 will always be remembered as the year of the coronavirus, but we all hope that it gets something more than that in our lives. So I think the whole winemaking industry in Italy is working. The whole wine industry is trying to do their best to make out of 2020 an outstanding, an incredible, something really to remember, a vintage to remember. And at the same time, for us in all the other departments, so taking out the production, it was a great opportunity to think about also our business and our future. Having opportunities like this seminar tonight, having the opportunity to have more interaction with our customers is a great thing, because sometimes when you make wine, you tend to be self-referred. I think you have to have your own idea. Gaia was explaining this very well. I mean, you have to have your own idea of what you want to do with the wine recipe. Talking with people that enjoy the wine, having the opportunity to tell the story, this is very important. And I think this moment is changing our agenda. Maybe we are also taking out some commitments that are not that urgent, and we are spending more time in other things that may be very, very interesting and useful for the future. But of course, it's a big impact in our everyday life. So even the good things, they are minimum compared to the difficult situation we're living.
It is a little bit of perspective, I think, which is something. But I'm glad everybody here is safe and healthy, and that we're at a point where you're mainly in the vineyard this time of year. Gaia, we have there was a Dennis from Sacramento, Ali in New York, and Gary in Pennsylvania. We're all asking about climate change and sustainability. So Gaia, I was wondering, because I remember when I was there a couple of years ago, we were talking a little bit about climate and planting in different places in the Langhi, and so what kind of differences, or what are you doing? How is it affecting your climate, the change in climate affecting your decisions in the vineyard?
The climate change is just very stressful for farmers, because there are no more predictable. I mean, the weather is unpredictable by definition, but the seasons are very, very unpredictable. You can have more and more often winters without any snow, too warm. You can have months of rains, especially in May, June, in seasons where usually you hope to have the sun. You can have very prolonged drought during the summer. So climate change is simply a weather that becomes more aggressive in his expression. And so obviously there are many things that can be done. You can move higher in altitude, which is something that we can do in Piedmont. there are some regions that are completely flat. So in our area, you can play with it. You can move the vineyards on another exposure. You can go higher in altitude. But I think that what really counts, what is important, is simply to, and that's why we talk about being more sustainable. It's directly connected with the changement of climate. We need all to be much more protective of the soil. You need to have soils much more alive, because the more alive are the soil, the more they can react to the extremes of the weather. And so if you have a soil that is full of organic matter, it's going to be a soil that doesn't get eroded as easily when you have a water bomb, or doesn't lose water, but remains moist for a longer time. So I think that work on sustainability, try to walk away from chemical products, try to have soils that are covered of life. It's the way to go.
Perfect. Yeah, no, that's good. It's important. I think a lot of people are thinking about it. So, and you do have that altitude to keep going up.
Yes, but it's a process that takes a long time.
Yeah, no,
it's just a mentality that has to change.
It's good.
It's not just changing the rootstock.
Right. Yeah. No. Then yeah, that all takes time. So, but I'm glad everybody's thinking about it now. So the last question, Alessandro, I'm going to have you take this one. But Michael from Washington and Peter from Rhode Island were asking, when one is able to travel back to Italy, again, do you have any recommendations on how to plan or make arrangements on wineries to visit?
Well, the first piece of advice I give to everyone coming to Tuscany, and a lot of people don't think about it, is to rent a car first. Because a lot of people ask us, like, is it easy to move around? Yes, it is fairly easy, but if you have a car or hire a driver or something, definitely, being on wheels helps, because the distances can be, I mean, they're not that big of a distances, but maybe public transportation doesn't really work as easy as other places or big cities. So especially wine regions, you have to have a car to drive around.
Yeah, Piedmont too. There's not a lot of Uber, right? Yeah.
Oh, no,
yeah.
not.
No.
Then of course you want to live, you want to feel the atmosphere. So somewhere, to stay, the best option is always to stay in a so-called agriturismo, in a farmhouse. Most estates, most wineries have their own, hospitality. So it's always better to, get a farmhouse or, bed and breakfast, something possibly within the property. This way you will really live the atmosphere, enjoy, the countryside, wake up with sunrise over the vineyards. There's always, part of the atmosphere. And of course, maybe early in the morning here, people working, but that is also, part of the experience. Of course, it's Tuscany, Piedmont, Italy, the wine regions of Italy are beautiful. So it's always, a good opportunity to go when, of course, people will be allowed to travel again. But when it'll be the case, will be always great to, live and breathe the atmosphere. Of course, enjoy the typical food of the wine regions paired, with the local wines. So yeah, definitely, I mean, rent a car, find a nice farmhouse, and of course, make a lot of appointments, for wineries to visit. That always will make your experience, special, and, to remember. Of course, wine always tastes better where it's made, but of course, will taste as good, when you bring it back home and you have the good memories of your trip to the wine regions.
This is true. Yes, it's very true. Yeah, that is good. Yes, call and make appointments. This is not like Napa or Sonoma. Oh, and be careful of people on mopeds. Whew, there's people on mopeds in Italy. They're scary, the Vespas. But yeah, well, you probably okay for me.
Safe cows, like it's really safe.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for staying. We're 20 minutes over what we normally do, but I really appreciate you being here, taking the time, staying up really late. For those of you in Italy, I know it's quite late there, and sharing the stories of your wines. Italy is just such a unique and diverse place, and one of my favorites. I think it's got a little bit of something for everyone. So I hope those of you watching at home, whether you opened one wine or 3 wines or all 6 wines, that you've enjoyed the wines and enjoyed the conversation that we've had. And we hope that you'll come back and purchase some more wines and go visit Italy and reach out to the wineries to find out how you can do that. So thank you all so much again for joining us. We really appreciate it. And for those of you who weren't able to open all wines again, this will be on YouTube on the Wine.com channel, so you can go back to relive some of the tasting and enjoy those. So thank you all. Cheers.
Cheers.
You.
Thank you
Very much. Stay safe and stay well. Yes.
Ciao, good evening.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Bye.
It's both a science and a form of high art. It's made from the combination of grapes, sunlight, rain, soil, and time. It's raised up in the moments that matter. It's wine. And we are Wine.com. We have the largest wine selection in the world, online sommeliers with free advice, and now our powerful new app puts the entire world of wine in your hands. Wine.com. Seriously